So, Andrea, here we are at this point in time that if we rewind 2, 3 years ago, that this probably wouldn't have been something that you'd have imagined to be true in your world. So just help us
Never.
understand, like, how do we get to this? Because what you did is something that most people wouldn't do.
Well, in June of 2022, I stumbled across one of your books, Exactly What to Say for Real Estate Agents. I read it, actually, I listened to it in 2 days, and I started teaching it illegally, or at least sharing it with friends, not knowing it was a licensed product. And everyone's conversion just went through the roof. So I thought to myself, well, this guy's onto something. So I wanted to use your content with my content, and I thought, I have two ways of doing this. I can either go through a lawyer, which feels very expensive as a new company, or I can do what I do best, and I can just cold call you. So I went on a website and looked up Phil M. Jones in New York, and the eighth phone number down was yours. And it was maybe 7 o'clock on a Thursday night. You were at a happy hour with a bunch of real estate agents. You picked up the phone, and I knew I had the right person because you're British, obviously. And I just threw up so much information on you. I was so nervous. And by the end of the conversation, which surprised me, you said, I would love to collaborate. Here's my email.
Right.
And that was June of 2022. You were going to be at an event that I was at in Texas in August. And after seeing you speak that week, I was too nervous to introduce myself to you and email you like I said I would. But I was not too nervous to borrow someone else's name tag and sneak into a luncheon where you were giving a private keynote.
Right.
And then from there on Instagram, I saw that you had a community of guides where people would be able to share your work. So I interviewed in December of 2022.
Wow.
And that's how I ended up in your chair today.
And what's always fascinated me and impressed me about you is that we live in a world where people are wishing, waiting, hoping, and praying for things to happen in their life. They are looking to be chosen. And even in the content game, right? People are doing like, look at me, come choose me, like pick me type content. Whereas you've always taken an approach that says if there's something you want, you're going to like choose it, get after it, relentlessly go make progress towards it. Where does that come from?
I think earlier in my career, I aligned myself with people who I thought would help me achieve my goal.
Okay.
And I didn't get there even when I followed the steps.
Okay.
So I thought if I want to get where I want to go, I need to take it into my own hands and just go after myself. I need to bet on myself.
Okay.
You know, if it's meant to be, it's up to me.
Yeah.
I'm going to go execute because I want it.
Right.
I mean, whether that was competing in some fitness sports in my past or this, it's the quickest line for me to be is just go make it happen yourself.
Okay. And where are there examples of where that showed up in your life?
So a lot of my greatest, not accomplishments, but connections have been from just going and doing it. So my old boss is from Lincoln Financial. He worked with Tony Robbins. And I said I wanted to go to one of his events, and I said it, and he went and he got me a ticket. And then I was on QVC, met Tony backstage, and then I was gifted a business mastery ticket. So as you know, I don't have a problem telling people when I want something and being vocal about it. And if you don't ask, you don't get. So it's the why behind it. I'm driven because I want to have certain things. I want to have quality time with my family. I want to be able to give money away and support other people. So that's really behind what drives me to do it is 90% of the people aren't going to do it. And I know I will. So it's going to get done. That's just the hard work ethic comes from my parents.
Okay. But you are like a master connector. Like you step into any room full of strangers and you leave with friends. I don't think there are many weeks that don't go by that you're not sharing with me or somebody in our community. Like you showed up to a thing and you left with 5 new BFFs and 3 big business opportunities and 2 people that are asking for information about you and what you can do for them, that you really had no right to be able to leave with those level of connections. How do you think about stepping into environments that are largely full of strangers and actually be confident and brave enough to start conversations and create connections?
It's a great question. When I was younger, I felt like I didn't belong. I was very young for my grade, so I didn't feel like I fit in. I was always picked last, and that left out feeling, it never felt good. It just felt kind of crappy. So as I became an adult and I stepped into my confidence, I thought maybe there's some other people feeling like that. And maybe they're hesitant to reach out to people or make friends. And that's number one. Number two, I find humans very fascinating. And if you ask them the right questions or enough of them, they will tell you everything.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of a game that how much information, not in a bad way, can I learn from this person? Can I really get to know them quickly? And how can I connect them with somebody else?
Okay. What's the difference between being hyper confident and then also being overbearing? Where does that line sit?
I think what I've been able to tame the last 2 years is if you can be confident and not be overbearing if you're holding space and asking enough questions to allow people to open up to you. Okay. So you got to turn down that intensity notch just a tiny bit. And I'm not just a firing squad of questions. I'm repeating, affirming, getting deeper, getting to know them more, and knowing when to stop and not get too personal.
Okay. So how do you choose when to turn it on? Because if you're collecting connections everywhere you go, if you're open-minded to be able to pick up the phone to strangers and get after what you want, my guess is that you create such an abundance of new relationships, new opportunities, new connections, that it can find you in like a state of overflow or overload that is hard to be able to maintain or to nurture those relationships for purpose. How do you draw that line?
Well, number one, it's always on, unfortunately. It doesn't stop. And then when I'm done peopling, I go to a quiet space. What I've been doing is being really intentional about my contact management system.
Okay.
And when I do make connections of other people that I'm just connecting them, I say, you don't need to send me an email. You don't need to send me a text message. You don't need to send me a thank you. Just if you're connecting with this person, it means I trust you with that relationship, and go run with it. So to answer your question, it can be overwhelming, meeting a lot of people, connecting a lot of people. However, usually I make that connection. They go off, do what they do. If it's a connection for myself, it's being fanatical about my contact management system. I mean, fanatical.
Okay, so there's actually system and process behind this.
Yes. Tagging. Lots of tagging my CRM, recording conversations. I'm an aggressive note taker.
Okay.
So everything goes into my contact management system.
What does that look like?
Any email that comes in, it gets downloaded into my CRM. So email communications recorded.
Okay.
Whether it's a phone call, an appointment, a pipeline, all of that lives in my CRM, and notes. I mean, if you told me your daughter's name, your dog's name, all of that personal information goes into the contact management system, because if I talk to that person again and I remember that little fact that's very important to them, it's going to make the relationship better.
Okay. Why don't people do that?
The easy answer would be to say that they're lazy. And I don't think people are lazy about it. I think it could be a few things, and I'm curious about it. So those few things are they don't make the time for it. They don't have the systems to build it, if that's not their personality trait. And the third thing that I think is at the heart of it is I don't think that they think it's important. And it's very important.
Okay. Why is it so important?
Because in today's society, people want to be seen and they want to be heard. And if you want to create relationships with people and they want to be seen and they want to be heard and they want to know that you understand them, it's the little things that matter. Like what lights them up. If you can find out what lights them up, game over.
Okay. So we want to find the little things. We want to find the little things that light them up. We want to document the little things. We want to not be afraid of speaking to strangers. We need to be able to get after opportunities everywhere we can. We need to pick the people that we want to be able to start new relationships with, barge through doors, get ourselves tickets to rooms that we're not supposed to be in. Right?
It was a name tag.
Okay, a name tag, so that you didn't even have a ticket. Just sneak attack through on that as well. This feels like a lot. And then when you add that to our interactions with people are now across multiple inboxes, multiple different modalities. We got comments on our YouTube videos. We've got comments on our social media posts. We've got DMs. We've got text boxes. We've got Slack channels. We've got LinkedIn. We've got email. We've got Zoom calls. We've got group meetings. We've got friends within friends. We've got masterminds, etc. Like, how does one person control all of this intelligence we're being asked to collect from all these interactions and do all of the things?
This is something when I work with my clients, it's if you're speaking to someone and your preferred method of communication is text message,
right?
Don't try and call Phil if he prefers a text message. Don't. Because and if I might prefer the phone, but you might prefer a text message, it's a swing and a miss because you want to be communicated with your style, not how I want to communicate, which is picking up the telephone.
Yeah.
So I think it's paying attention.
Don't call me. I mean, the fact that you got a call with me is still a miracle to me. Like, I don't answer the phone, so that was maybe serendipity or something. But
good to know.
Like, I literally do not, like, my phone is permanently on Do Not Disturb.
Well, not that night.
I have like 600 unlistened to voicemails that I will probably never listen to.
So I would say, what platforms do you want to be on?
Mm-hmm.
How do you prefer connecting with people? I think those are really good questions to ask. And it's where's your audience? Is your audience responding to text messages? Are your audiences getting face-to-face? Are your audiences preferring phone calls? Are they at networking events? Where are they?
Okay.
And something that I learned from you is make sure you have visibility. So does my visibility match across LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram? Is it all the same look and feel?
Okay. You have a tenacity to you that could easily have people looking at the way that you carry yourself, looking at the kind of advice or the results that you're given, and say, well, that's okay if you're you, Andrea. But like me, I'm different. That isn't my persona. Mm-hmm. That isn't who I am. I don't have that same level of swagger or whatever it might be. And like the skills that you're talking about here, the mindset that you're talking about, is this something that people have it or they don't have it? Is this something that you're either fortunate enough to be gifted with it and it can't be learned? Are people born with these skills or are they made with these skills? Like, what's your take on that?
People need to connect with other people in a way that feels comfortable to them. I prefer the telephone because it's the quickest way and I'm a little impatient. So if people are looking to connect with other people, I think they should do it in an environment that they feel good about. And that could be going to a book club. That could be going to an in-person networking event. That could be playing video games. So however you prefer to connect with someone, it's not just the phone. And there was a time in my life when I wasn't as confident as I am today. And I made a decision back in 2017 that my words, because I am so fiery, they can either empower or disempower people. And I needed to be very intentional with my intensity and strong, sharp tongue. And because people will come back up to me and say, Andrew, do you remember when you said that? I didn't know that I said that. And it sounded like me. And I thought, well, I could have said that better. So the only reason I am the way I am today is because there was moments throughout my career where I didn't have the right words to communicate how I was feeling. And that's where the strength and the tenacity and the fieriness comes from. Because I never want somebody else to be at a loss for words in situations like that. Mm-hmm. So if you can get ahead of the conversations, prepare for them, do them on repeat and practice them, you'll be more confident. It's not like I was just born this way. I was tired of not fighting for myself.
So let's talk about practice. Let's talk about rehearsal. Let's talk about scripting. A script's a good idea, yes or no?
It depends.
Okay, but what do you think and what does it depend upon?
If we're on a movie set and everybody has a script, that's great.
Okay.
If we're not on a movie set and I teach you a script and the other person goes off script, you will be lost. So how can I teach my students how to be able to be present in the conversation, not think about the next thing that they're going to say, be really curious and into the conversation, and not be focused on everything that they're trying to get out of the conversation, which I call leading the witness.
Okay. So how does one go about practicing that to a point that they do feel ready, that they're not worried about what they're going to say next? How does somebody elevate a practice in a way that does feel natural? It feels like they're in control and they're not panicked.
One way that I've been doing it since 2020 is every morning from 8:30, 9 o'clock, we role play different situations.
Okay.
So that's one way we do it as a group with some of our sales teams. One of the ways that I do it personally is every important conversation, and there's a lot of them. Mm-hmm. I definitely put a lot more thought into conversations than I used to. I practice with somebody else because if I practice in my head, I'm not curious. And it's a one-way conversation. If I practice with you or with a colleague, I can hear the tonality when it comes out of my mouth. I can hear where I'm not being curious. I can hear how it could go sideways. So for my business and personal conversations, I usually practice with a colleague. And then with my students, we practice a half an hour, 4 days a week. I would say the biggest mistake is that people stop practicing because they think they've mastered it.
Okay. And there's almost a a badge of honor in society with like, oh, you're so quick-witted, you're so, confident when you speak in front of rooms full of people, is you always know what to say, you've got the gift of the gab, or whatever it is that people might say. Is there truth in that some people just have it and other people don't?
I think it's a skill that you work on.
Okay.
I can tell you in the last 2 years that I've known you, getting up and speaking in front of a group has been a lot of repetition that's not on stage.
Okay.
Practicing in my house, talking to myself in front of a mirror, practicing in front of different audiences who maybe do or don't know the content. So I think it is a skill that continuously needs to be worked if you want to do things at a high level.
Okay.
Because people don't see what happened. They don't see what happens behind the scenes. They just see the big moment on stage. Well, what did it take to get the big moment on stage?
Right.
A lot of little moments.
Got it. People often think that sales is a numbers game. Like if all you do is that you put the numbers in, you make the calls, you make the outreach, you make the connections, then you'll get the output the other side. Is that true? Is it just a numbers game?
I used to think that way.
Okay.
And now I feel a little different. Because if you're just way more intentional with what you're doing in the moment, you don't have to hit as many numbers. So there was a team that I worked with out of Maryland.
Right.
And they wanted me to track my numbers. And I fought it. I said, well, I'm your contractor. I don't need to track my numbers. And then when I finally broke down and tracked my numbers, it only took me 30 dials, not contacts, 30 dials to set an appointment. So I was like, so I don't need to work like 4 hours a day. I only had to make calls less than an hour. That was easy.
Right.
You don't need more leads. You need to do better with the leads that you have.
I'm glad to hear that, because I see a lot of activity encouraged within sales teams that to my mind is having a detrimental effect as opposed to a positive effect. And people are bruising very genuine opportunities because they don't have the skill set or the mindset or the capacity to be able to actually intelligently nurture a conversation with that human being. And we've had a decade where people have believed that there's an infinite amount of resource, right? There's always more leads, there's always more people, there's always more opportunity. And as much as I believe in abundance, I think there's also an awareness that there is a finite number of people that meet your target market. There is a finite number of people that are going to meet the right time, right place, right moment to be ready to purchase your wares. And if when you show up into a moment that could have been right and you're less than valuable, then you just made yourself definitely not the person they're going to pick.
And most people aren't prepared for those moments. Most people are showing up and just winging it.
Okay.
And if it comes to your financial future that provides for your family, why would you ever just wing it?
Okay.
I can't say that I haven't winged it. I have, but now I know better, so I can do better.
So you've helped hundreds of people in sales roles find method and structure and purpose to their practice. You've helped them develop systems and modes of operations that allow them to be able to really amplify their results. What is true in all of the scenarios where you've moved somebody, to quote the name of your business, from a rookie to a rainmaker? Like what is the process of getting somebody from like, I'm enthusiastic and confident and I want to be able to win, to be like, oh dang, they're a winner? Like how do you get them through that process?
So one of the first things that I do when I meet with people is realize where they're at and see what they're capable of and see if they're willing to get there.
Okay.
So I don't want a prisoner. I want someone who wants it. They have to make the decision that they are willing to do the work. So if they're willing to do the work to get them to be a rookie to rainmaker, I first find out how they prefer to connect with people. Because if I told someone to call for sale by owners and expireds, for example, and that's not what they're into, they're not going to do it.
Right.
So it's getting to know them, getting to see what data they have, what types of phone calls they're going to make, and then creating a plan around how they're going to hit their goals with the data that they have. And all that can be systems and processes and really mechanical and technical. I would say the biggest thing is letting them know, like, I believe in you. You can do it. You can do it. And when you're an entrepreneur, there's not a lot of people there cheering for you and cheering you on. It's being that one person like, you want to do 700,000 next year? Yeah, I can get you there. We're going to have to do some things together, and we're going to have to, up-level your skill set, but we can get there.
Okay.
Because I can look at their data and know if they can get there.
What almost always sits in the plan? What almost always are the things that they need to do to be able to achieve the outcomes that they're currently not getting?
Be more intentional about their conversations.
Okay.
Not Oftentimes when you're the expert, it's very easy to tell the other person that they're wrong
Okay.
and be confrontational. Realizing how to show up in a conversation and be an advocate and be a consultant and be okay walking away without the business if that's the best thing for the person in front of them. So it's getting them not to push their agenda. I would say 90% of the time.
Okay.
That's what I see is I'm like, that's about you. That's about you. That's about you. It's not about the person in front of you. It's not about the person in front of you. That question. So they're focused on their own agenda in most of their conversations. And they're horrible at follow-up. Horrible. Like they're not setting a next step. So it's like a one-hit wonder. That's what I call that, one-hit wonder sales call.
What does that actually look like? So if they're a one-hit wonder, what are they doing and what makes them horrible at follow-up?
Sure. They are getting what they need out of the conversation. They are not finding out what's important to the other person about the decision that they're making. If that person is not ready to go right now, they drop the lead. They're looking for the next hot lead.
So give me an example. Let's go super granular on this. What is somebody doing? Who are they calling? What are they saying? And then what are they not following up with?
Okay, so suppose an online lead comes in. They're picking up the phone and it's like, hey, Phil, this is Andrea with XYZ Company. I saw you were looking at 123 Main Street. What do you like about the house? Are you pre-approved? I'm like, oh. And they ask very broad questions at the beginning of the call. And they only ask questions that help them do their job better instead of finding out what's important to that person about the item that they're looking at. So they show up ready to transact when someone's just curious about the item, the product, the house.
Okay.
So they're showing up with very different intentions. The salesperson's showing up looking for a sale, and the consumer is just kind of somewhat interested, maybe swiping right.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
Like, don't show up trying to get married if someone else is just trying to go on a first date.
Okay. Okay. That's a big idea. And if then they close that conversation out where that person is not ready to transact, are you saying they just let it go dead from there and they do nothing? Or they do something worse than that?
Well, sometimes it goes dead from there. And it's funny because I listen to sales calls. You can hear the tonality in the salesperson be dismissive.
Wow.
Because they're not ready now. So the consumer feels not seen, not heard. Or suppose you have someone who's a renter, for real estate professionals. It's like, oh, done. And in the beginning, 4 years ago, when me and my first inside sales agent, my hairdresser, we worked a lead till it literally, there was nothing left. So a lot of times after that first phone call, if the person's not ready, you're going to hear it in the tonality. They will not ask enough questions, potentially archive or trash the lead. I mean, I can't tell you how many contact management systems I go into where there's archived and trashed leads, and it'll be a good, highly paid lead source. I'm like, give me that archive folder. Why is it archived?
Right.
It doesn't need to be archived.
It's like a Glenn Ross moment of like, these are the bad leads, right?
There's no such thing as a bad lead.
Okay.
I mean, I turned a wrong phone number into a $290,000 buyer. Like, there's no such. If someone picks up the phone, game on, right? So they don't spend the time on the phone to get the information they need. They don't have a next step to get back in front of them, or they can't overcome the objection. Oh, they have an agent. Well, suppose you walk into Nordstrom and someone says, can I help you find something? You're like, no, I'm good. It's like that type of example. It's like they have an agent. Maybe they just didn't know you and you came across really pushy and they just said that.
So what should somebody be doing instead?
Besides practicing their phone calls before they make their phone calls, is take the time to be intentional about what's in their database.
Okay.
Have a plan for calling it.
Yeah.
Knowing what they're saying and having a different level of success from every single phone call. Is the next step going to be a meeting? Is the next step going to be a phone call? Is the next step going to be an email? Is the next step going to be a text message? What recommendation am I making at the end of the call if they're not ready to transact now, which is probably 90% of the people you talk to? I would say having that next step set up before you even go into the call, so that way you have a plan B.
Okay. And is this just phone calls or is this Zoom meetings? Is
Everything.
this face-to-face?
Everything.
Okay.
If you are showing up as a professional at a high level, you are going into the meeting knowing what outcomes there could potentially be. You might get a curveball.
Okay.
You always need to say, all right, well, the next step is, and it should be solely based on what the other person shared in that meeting.
What role does automation and artificial intelligence play in this type of business development, customer outreach relationship? Like, what do you see happening here?
I think there's a space for automation, However, if we get to the point where automation is too automated, it loses the personal connection. There are certain people who send me emails, and when I've met them in person, I know they don't talk like that. So I feel a little insulted because they put their email into ChatGPT and now it's like a fake polished version of them.
Okay.
And I prefer real connections, so it feels inauthentic.
Okay.
So that I think that's the way we're going. And if we continue to have all these automations and these AIs, it's not bad. It loses the human factor.
Mm-hmm.
And people do business with people that they like, they know, they trust. That's number one. Number two, for example, I write auto plans sometimes for teams. And what I've learned the hard way is I can write a really good auto plan, but if the team doesn't know how to speak how I speak and how the auto plan speaks, it's not a good fit. So I only write auto plans now with teams who I can coach, that once someone responds to the auto plan, which is really just, hey, they put their hand up saying, I'm ready to have a conversation, I'm not ready to transact.
Yeah.
They need to be able to have a real conversation based on what was emailed. Because everyone, say for example, a lead comes in and someone is thinking about buying a house. A lot of the auto plans are like, oh, you're looking to buy, you're pre-approved. And it's like so punchy. It's like, whoa, we're not even on the first date and you're trying to get engaged. So I think the auto plans that are poorly written are trying to move the transaction forward versus meeting people where they're at today, which is I just clicked on a house.
Okay.
In that example.
So automated email responders, journeys, sequences, auto plans, whatever you choose to call them, they have a place, but the risks are trying to rush too much too soon. The risks are that there's a disconnect, that if it doesn't sound like you when they meet you, that you lose trust.
Or if the salesperson forgets to pause the auto plan. They had a really great conversation and now the system's sending messages that don't make sense. I see that so often.
Okay. Well, people want there to be an easy button. And I remember having a conversation with a large group just last week about some of the communications that are being written on their behalf by their marketing department. And the challenge that I think every sales professional needs to wrap their head around is if the automation and the AI can do it without you, then it will end up doing it without you. Therefore, you are not necessary. Therefore, you be fired. Right? Like that's where it could get to if it was good enough. And my genuine belief is in most industries, we're trying to help human beings navigate one of the most emotionally charged, difficult decisions of their life. And they need somebody to get in the mess in that. Mm-hmm. Anything that is automated and predetermined is likely to be less than perfect. It's like the meal that you get on your flight is never what you wanted to eat.
Exactly.
Like never, ever, ever, because it needs to be so pre-planned ahead of time that it needs to like be okay for so many people. Therefore, it's not right for anybody.
Exactly. And when you say it's okay for so many people, do I want to work with so many people or do I want to work with the right people?
Okay.
So I understand we could be marketing to the masses and that might be a space for auto plans to see who's interested. But sometimes you get people that you don't want to work with marketing that way.
Okay.
And I'd rather be intentional about who I work with because I'm spending 40, 50, 60 hours a week with these potential clients.
Okay. I want to talk a little about your journey as a speaker.
Oh.
Because I know, like, if we go back just a simple period of 2.5 years, is Andrea didn't necessarily want to stand in front of large rooms full of people. Happy working with people one-on-one, happy rolling your sleeves up in a workshop environment, happy getting into consulting conversations to help people navigate their sales processes to a higher degree, to help individuals up-level their own performance. But the idea of standing on a stage and delivering a presentation was something you lived in fear of.
Correct. It's the only box that I didn't check off when I became a guide. There's all these things that you can put your hand up for. It's literally the only box that I did not check. It's like keynote speaking. I was like, nope, I'm good. You can keep that, Phil.
Yeah, not for me, not for me. I do not want to speak. And I find that interesting that in a big part of your body of work, you're helping people navigate things that they're scared to do. Mm-hmm. Scared to talk to strangers at a networking event, scared to pick up the phone, scared to re-engage on a follow-up conversation, scared to invite people to a meeting, scared to invite people on a date. And then here you are in a situation that you're dealing with something that you're scared of, which is standing in front of an audience full of people and speaking. Firstly, can we explore the fear? Like, what was it that made you think that this is something you either didn't want to do or wasn't capable of doing?
didn't want to do because I felt like the people in the audience would be judging me. However, what I tell my clients is it's not about you.
Okay.
It's not about you. It's who you are in that moment helping the people in front of you. It's not about you. If you can show up and really help them, you shouldn't be nervous. You're only nervous if you don't know the content. And every time I'm asked to speak, I know the content at a very, very high level. So why would I be nervous?
So what's the conversation you've had with yourself that has allowed that to change?
If other people think I'm really good at this, maybe I can borrow their courage
Okay.
and get on stage and do it anyway. And after you speak enough and you get the repetitions in and you get better and you understand the art of speaking and movement, and I've done a lot of work behind the scenes, that everyone's going to be nervous. It's not just me. And if you're not nervous, then that means you don't really care. And I care at a high level. So the journey has been, even Phil gets nervous maybe sometimes.
Of course. I'd be nervous if I wasn't nervous. I'd be even more nervous. I'd actually be anxious.
Yes. So, and how can I prepare ahead of time? How can I get ahead of the speech, know the content, interview the people, make sure it lands? There's a lot of preparation that I didn't know was involved, and you can't just wing it. I mean, you can wing it, but the level of speakers that I've seen, like yourself and some of your colleagues, like Jamie and Clint, I see what they deliver, and that's my standard. And I know I'm not close to that. I'm on the way, but that's my standard of where it should be. And it feels like a very long road in between.
Well, I think you're a very practical, brilliant, inspirational individual in that journey in your life. Because in just 2 short years, 2.5 years, you've gone from, I don't want to do this. I don't believe I'm good at this. I don't believe the marketplace even wants me to be able to do this. To then track the last 12 months that you've delivered both a quantity, a quality, and a fee level of presentations. That means that your reps and your earnings from keynote speaking would put you in the top 10% of professional speakers in North America, which is a fairly big trajectory. And, to go from top 10% to top 1% is a significantly bigger leap. But you are now adding to your repertoire a level of competence that didn't exist previously. Like, how does that change your perception of self if you're to think about this moment in time?
I can't believe I even accomplished it. I feel like we were sitting here a year and a half ago. It was a day in New York City, and you were doing a whole entire class on professional speaking with some of the guides. I didn't tune out. I took lots of notes, but I still thought in that room, oh, this will never be me. I learned a lot about speaking fees, how you have to do the work. You literally, whether you're starting at the bottom level, I wrote down every single step that you had to do to get there. And when I was asked to speak, I had all the steps. And then when people started to see me speak more, I had the path. So I would say just getting comfortable with being uncomfortable to answer your question. Really had to get very comfortable with being, the last 2 years have been very uncomfortable.
So if you're talking to a version of yourself, somebody who's out there in the world today that perhaps isn't being as kind to themselves about what they're capable of, or you want to give some encouragement about just how much progress somebody can go on in their own journey over the next year or two of their life, what might you say to them to help them both take stock of where they're at and to help give them some energy for the journey ahead?
I would ask them, when was the last time you were scared to do something in the beginning and then you were able to execute it at a fairly decent level? And what were you scared of before? And what's something you've already accomplished? That's number one. And then I would say, who's your cheering squad? Who's your hype girl? Who's the people that's around you? Because there's so many people in our community that like, what do you mean? I think you'd be great on stage. I'm like, oh God. So I think having the right community and asking people where was there a time in their life where they were scared of something that they got past.
Okay. And what is the cost of not having those kind of conversations with yourself and not surrounding yourself with the right kind of people who believe in you?
Working to fulfill someone else's dream and not your own.
And what are the consequences of that?
Not having the fullest life you could have. Not being able to spend the time that you want with your family or not having quality time with your family because you don't love your job or you're not happy or someone says, well, you're worth $50,000, Phil. So having someone else determine what you're worth versus you taking it into your own hands and running with it. Okay. It's a very big cost, actually.
So how does somebody navigate that struggle where they believe in themselves, they have confidence to grow, that they understand that there's always so much more to do, they're never going to get it perfect, but they have to maintain high standards. How does somebody navigate that struggle over a period of time when it's a lot more than just a you can do it and here's a big pat on the back? How do they sustain the decision to say they're going to keep getting better?
I think it starts with knowing it's never going to be perfect, knowing the greatest things in life are on the other side of uncertainty.
Okay.
Like, life isn't certain. So whether I'm good or I'm not good, I should just execute. It's never going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And what rooms can you put yourself in that make you very uncomfortable? My first certification in New York. I mean, you knew who was in the room, like very successful people. And I was like, do I belong here? I'm some girl like from Delco, Pennsylvania. And here's all these great people, very accomplished. So get around better people. I've grown so much in the past few years because of the environments that you've helped us be in.
And I like that from how do you go from adversity to opportunity? Mm-hmm. I guess my question is more focused on how do you keep going? I think when people are in a difficult situation or that they believe they can do better is they can make the first jump. What I'm intrigued to understand is how do you make the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh? Like how do you sustain that mindset of questing for better whilst also being aware that you're less than and not give up? How do you keep going?
Question. I think it's the why behind why I'm doing it and what the alternative is to not doing it. So back in 2017, as I shared with you last night, I knew that I wanted to have a very different life because I knew if my parents got older, I wanted to spend time with them. And I wanted to become financially free to be able to do that. And in order to become financially free, I needed help. Okay. And I aligned myself with different people along the way who I thought, could help me get there. And then I realized if I really want this, I have to do it myself. So I stepped into doing things that terrified me.
Yeah.
Because to become financially free, it takes risks to step into that. However, the alternative is working for somebody else and not being able to be there. And if it comes down to being able to be with my parents and be present because I own my own business and I can control things versus being an employee, my parents are going to win every single time.
Okay. So
that strong drive to be able to become financially free, to be there as they get older, that's behind everything that I do. And there's a lot of things I do that are terrifying, but if it comes down to my parents, I'm going to pick them every time.
So finding what you're in service of and then not letting go of that and being brave enough to work on something that's bigger than yourself, but is also remarkably inclusive of yourself. Mm-hmm. We're going to finish our conversation out as tactically, practically as possible, because I know that one thing about you and your work is like we don't do too much theory. It is a lot about like, here's what needs to happen. It's go time. Like we got to get results. We got to get results now.
I don't like to waste time.
So we're going to create a hypothetical scenario. You and I are going to jam on this. You're going to come up with something. I'm going to come up with something. You're going to come up with something. And here's the hypothetical scenario. We got 30 days and we got to find 30 new clients. What do we do? 30 days.
Give me your phone.
30 clients. But let's make it. What's the first thing you would do? I'll say something. You'll say something. Let's see how many very practical ideas. 30 days to get 30 new clients. What do we do? Kick us off.
I would start by saying for those 30 new clients, who have you worked with in the past? So I'm going to ask you about your past clients because I know that referrals convert at a higher level than cold leads. So I'm going to start asking you about your past clients.
Okay. So you're going to get a list of past clients, people that you've worked with in the past that you're going to have some degree of know, like, and trust with. What would I be doing if I wanted 30 new clients and I've got 30 days to be able to do it? Is I would very much narrow down a specific niche, specific group of people that I knew that had a mission critical problem that I knew I could help with at that period of time. So I'd get hyper focused on who has a painful issue in their world right now that I could show up in support of, and I'd build a list of those.
I like building that list and being super intentional about who you're going after.
Okay.
For the next thing that I would do, I would make sure that I could articulate how I can help them at a very high level so they understand just how great their pain is.
Yeah. So I'd start to be able to build a value prop and a series of like materials in my head and in my repertoire that means that I could show up for those moments. So we've got a past client list. We've got a hyper-focus list. You're then working scripts and dialogues and language levels towards that list. And at this point in time, I'd be hoping that we've got somewhere like 300 people that are real names of real people that we can start conversations with. What I then look to probably do is create some form of Trojan horse event, some form of stepping stone before the island that I'm going to invite these people to, and find a way of me getting visibility and credibility at scale. So I'm not having one-on-one prospecting calls, I'm having one-to-many prospecting calls. So that could be a webinar, that could be a live event engagement, that could be a lunch and learn, that could be a group Zoom call. I'd be looking to be able to get that group of people into an event-based environment to try to win trust and plan the next step.
I like that. I'm going to add on to that, not only about that event, and who has an audience that is my ideal audience, who will champion those events with me, or could that event be on their platform?
Yeah.
And they're bringing me in as a specialist.
So you do an OPA, you do other people's audiences, right?
Yes, OPA.
Yeah. And that you'd say, how do I go serve somebody else's people as opposed to trying to attract them to mine? So I think we've done 5 things, and we've already got probably opportunity for more than 30 clients in 30 days just from that same piece. I think I'd do one other thing is I'd be hyper-focused on who I could make direct, bold asks of with vulnerable confidence. And that could be as simple as like, hey, I've had some opening come up in capacity in my one-on-one schedule. It would be, I'd make bold, direct asks with people that I already had existing relationships with, and I'd probably do it via text message to basically say, I'm open for business. I'm not quite desperate, but I'm close. And, have time, have capacity, have energy, need money.
That could work too.
Yeah. And I'd just make myself available for hire, like real directly, so that people can say yes. And I'd be really easy to do business with. Like price points would be fair. There's no proposal process. There's no like sing for my supper moment. This is fastest route to cash.
Yeah. And that's something that I've learned from you the past 2 years is, are you easy to do business with, or are you the sales prevention team?
Right.
And what does easy to do business look like to your consumer?
Okay.
You might think they need X, Y, and Z, but if they just think they need X and it's a price point and they can get in there and it gives them what they need, you don't have to solve the world's problems in one transaction.
Okay. So we still need 30 clients in 30 days. We've got 6 things that we could be doing. What else could we be doing, Andrea? What else could be helping us give confidence to 30 clients in 30 days?
One thing that, because I've seen this in my own business, people buy multiple things from us, is what is something that my existing clients need that I don't know that they need, that I already provide, but they don't know that I provide.
Okay. So you'd be looking for upsells inside your existing client base.
Because that relationship's already there.
Yeah. Could be an easy next yes, right? Really straightforward. What would I be doing next is I'd be creating what I call phishing content online. Mm-hmm. So raise your hand style of content. And this could be almost missing person focused. Mm-hmm. So, I'm looking for 6 people that meet this criteria. If that could be you, raise your hand. I'm looking for 4 people that meet this criteria. If this is you, raise your hand. And I'm looking to try and attract from the people who might have been watching from a distance, like the lurkers that have been out in your social content. But it'd be quite direct. Is if this is you, here's an opportunity, raise your hand. But I'm not saying come to this page, click a form, buy now. I'm saying, tell me that you might be potentially possibly interested in something like this, like a really gray ask that people are inviting them into prospects. And my content would be very, very focused on tell me you might want to do business with me so I can get warm prospects.
I like that. Because you're not going for the hard sale.
Nope.
Maybe possibly thinking about it, could. So I like that. I am a big proponent of referrals.
Okay.
So I might call some of my clients, say, hey, I'm starting this in the next 30 days. Who do you know who needs this?
Okay.
And most of my business is referrals, and it's incoming.
So you'd activate your network of ambassadors, people that know you.
I usually I'm just going to call my friends.
Okay.
I'm just going to call my friends, see what's going on. And literally every single time I call a friend or a relationship who's a client or past client, and when they ask me what's going on, and they're like, oh, well, maybe we want that, or I know someone who wants that, or, oh, we're bringing on a new person to the team. I'd like them to go into that program. So it's just, I call it calling my friends.
And I think what we've identified here is, right, like if we did one of these things a day for the 8 days, that the first 8 of the 30 days would probably create enough noise that then is going to need the next 22 days to tidy up.
Yep.
Right? It isn't day 1 client, day 2
No.
client, day 3 client. It's
Pipeline.
build a big, busy pipeline. And what I love about these 8 ideas that we've come up with, some are phishing and marketing, some are activating networks, some are direct outreach towards people who could be ready to do business. Some are you looking to be able to say, well, can I focus on an industry or a niche? And as I try and summarize all of this with what we've managed to come up with together, is there's so much more that people are in control of when it comes to their business development than they think about. They have a spray and pray approach, or they have a pick me approach, where what they can do is choose themselves and then choose their game plan. And before long, getting 30 out of 3,000 opportunities feels like it's effortless. But too many people will try to get 27 yeses out of 19 opportunities.
It's a long-term game.
And wonder why they keep failing on it. Andrea, what do you want to leave us with that would be your approach, your take, your thought process on how somebody can win more business, grow their business, amplify their sales results in 2025 and beyond? Like, what would you be saying to somebody about what they should be thinking and doing more of to help them win in 2025 that they might not be doing today?
What relationships have you started that you haven't closed the loop?
Okay.
Go back through all your conversations from the last 2 years. Even 3 years, 5 years.
Yeah, if they're not a heck no, don't speak to me again. Go find out what's going on in their life and find out how you can help them.
Reconnect and reignite some of those relationships, because it wasn't a no, it was a not now, unless they told you to go fly a kite.
Right.
Being intentional about who your missing people are, and instead of chasing them, creating a space where you can attract them. Like, how can those people come find you? Are you putting content out that's something that they want to see that helps them? Or are you just like showboating and peacocking and, hey, look at me? Like, you often say, come with me versus look at me.
Right.
And I think it's creating content that is helping people, that gives value to attract the right people, and going through your connections from the last 3 to 5 years and getting back in front of them. Because the longer nurtures in your pipeline, they're going to convert faster because you spent the most time with them. And they know you. They might just have not been ready then. And it's making the decision that if it's meant to be, it's up to you. No one's coming to be like, hey, Phil, did you do your work? No. If you want it, go get it. No one's going to come to you. And I think earlier in the show, you had said people are wishing, waiting, and hoping. If I wished, waited, and hoped until you found me, we'd probably never meet, because you're on a trajectory. You're still growing.
100%.
And you're at a very, very high level. You would have never found me. So I had to chase you down, which is fine. I don't like being ignored. So I think knowing that if you really, really want something in life, it's a decision that you're going to go for it and you're willing to do the work for it. So that's what I would say is, if you want to make next year your best year ever, you have to do the work and be prepared to do it.
Andrea Ferry, you're a badass. Thank you for joining us on the show today.
Of
I'm excited to see what you do next with this illustrious career of yours.
I'm excited too. See where I am a year from now.